In this video, I'm going to walk you through node type in N8N. Once you enter the workspace in N8N, you can add lots of different nodes in your workflow. Some of these nodes allow you to integrate with different tools such as Slack, Google Analytics, Discord, and so on. But some of these nodes are commonly used when you are building a workflow, whether it's agentic or is a simple AI workflow. And we constantly using them and repeat them based on the use cases that we have. I categorize these nodes in 6 main categories, and I'm going to explain you where and how to use them. Let's have a look. As you can see here, there are 6 main categories: trigger or event nodes, action nodes, logic nodes, operation nodes, closing node, and AI model nodes. Let's explore each category one by one and see how and when we can use these nodes. Trigger or event nodes contain a schedule trigger, webhook, and manual trigger. Trigger or event nodes are the workflow starter. We use them to trigger the workflow and activate the process. A schedule trigger specifically allows us to schedule the workflow on a daily, hourly, weekly, monthly basis. And you can specify, for example, the number of the days and what time on the day that you want to activate the workflow. The webhook node provides a public URL, both in test environment and production environment, that allow us to send a request to the workflow. This is primarily helpful when you are integrating your workflow as a backend system with a mobile app or a web application. So you can use this public URL and send a request to that. Here we have get, post, put, delete method. And we use a pass here. Then we define an authentication, the header of, and you set up an auth key to prevent any stranger to access your URL. This is how we secure accessing to our workflow within N8N. Then we have manual trigger, which we double click on that, the workflow gets activated. The next set of node is action nodes, which contains code node that allow us to process the data that we receive as input, and we take some actions and processing and convert it to a specific format for the data. For example, I receive multiple rows and process that and only get a summary of that data and generate it in the output. Then another one is edit field or set. This is primary is for formatting the data in a specific way. And we quite often use that. For example, you trigger the workflow at a specific time, and then you want to use that a specific time for a start date and end date. You can use set node or edit fields for identifying the start date and end date of the workflow, for passing that through as a parameter to the workflow. Then we have HTTP request. HTTP request node allow us to send requests to different third-party API. For example, if you are integrating with AP file, you can use HTTP request node. To send the post or get request to AP file, you put the AP file endpoint here and then authentication if you have, and receive the data from that third party. The next set of node is logic nodes. We have switch. If you're familiar with programming, switch is similar to switch case in programming, where we receive a dynamic value in the input. Sometimes, for example, we get the color as yellow, sometimes we get red, sometimes it's blank. We define a rule. If it was yellow, generate this output. And if it was green, do this. And if it was black, do that, etc. So you can have multiple output for a dynamic input. On the other hand, we have if, where is a conditional node. If the input was equal with a specific value, then branch the workflow to a different output. It wasn't equal with that value, it will branch the workflow to a different line. So it has always 2 branches, which is result from the condition, whether it's true or false. Then we have wait node, which allows us to pause the workflow for a couple of seconds. For example, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and so on. We can even make it a bit longer, like for days, months, and minutes. Depends on your use cases. You can choose this wait node to pause your workflow. Then the next category is operations node. The first one is a split up. It divides the input to multiple branches. This is primarily good when you get a chunk of data and you want to split it. Then we have merge. When we have two different branches entering the merge node and you want to combine them to one output. And the next one is loop over items, which goes through the items again and again. It's similar to the for while loop in programming, if you are familiar with programming. Then we have closing node. Closing node are actually closing the workflow. One is respond to webhook, which help us to send the response back to initial webhook call. For example, you're using mobile app integration and you want to respond back to the mobile app. You will use that. And the next node is a stop and error, where if there was any failure in the workflow, it will stop the workflow and show a specific message and so on. And the last category is AI model nodes. In the starter kit and in the beginning of the foundation lesson, I showed you how to create an OpenAI key. But you can use other AI models as well in N8N, such as Anthropic, Mistral, Azure, Grok, Gemini, DeepSeek, and so on. Depends on your use cases, you can choose a different AI model, and that's completely okay. Because depends on your use cases, each AI model perform differently, and none of them are great for all scenarios. For example, Anthropic is really good for content creation, but OpenAI is great for computer vision at this point and outperform some of the other AI models. It depends on your use cases. You might want to research and consider and choose the right AI model for your use case. This was just a quick overview of different categories that we have in N8N for different node types. If you found this video helpful, join Agentic Lab via the link below, where you can join live session and ask your questions about any challenges you have when you are building workflow automation. See you there.